The air crackled with anticipation. Frank lived for football. It was more than a sport to him. It was a religion. His apartment was a shrine to the Twisters. Posters, helmets, signed footballs. Frank's loyalty was unwavering, his passion unmatched. Little did he know, his unwavering faith would soon be tested in the most unimaginable way. The Tulsa Twisters were perennial underdogs, the butt of every joke. Their losing streak was legendary, their home stadium a crumbling relic. Yet, amidst the despair, a flicker of hope remained. Frank, their unofficial leader, was a beacon of unwavering optimism. Little did he know, his unwavering faith would soon summon a force far more sinister than he could have ever imagined. The air hung heavy with humidity as Frank made his way to the stadium. The Twisters had lost again, a crushing defeat against their arch rivals. Frank slumped onto his usual bleacher seat, the worn wood offering little comfort. Even Frank, the eternal optimist, struggled to find a glimmer of hope. He wouldn't let them see him break, not yet. The bar was a dingy, dimly lit place, the kind that only true regulars frequented. Frank found himself nursing a whiskey, the amber liquid doing little to soothe his troubled soul. Another tough loss, eh, Frank? A gruff voice broke through his thoughts. Frank looked up to see a stranger sliding into the booth across from him. Could this man, this stranger with an unsettling aura, offer a solution to his torment? "What are you talking about?" Frank muttered, taking another swig of his whiskey. The stranger leaned in close, his voice a low, hypnotic murmur in Frank's ear. "I'm talking about a way to end the losing streak, Frank. A way to see the Tulsa Twisters rise to the top." Frank's breath hitched in his throat. Could this be true? "What's the catch?" Frank asked, his voice barely a whisper. The stranger's smile widened, revealing a set of teeth that seemed just a little too sharp, a little too predatory. "A small price, Frank. Your soul." With a deep breath and a heart filled with a potent cocktail of hope and dread, Frank clasped the stranger's hand, sealing his fate. The stranger's eyes flickered with a malevolent glee as Frank agreed to the terms. "Excellent," he hissed, his breath hot and sulphurous against Frank's ear. "Now for the ritual." He pulled a worn leather-bound book from his coat pocket, its pages filled with arcane symbols and cryptic writings that sent shivers down Frank's spine. The stranger began to chant in a language Frank didn't understand, his voice low and guttural, a sound that seemed to slither through the very air. As Frank spoke the final word, a bolt of lightning split the sky, illuminating the bar with an unnatural light. The air crackled with power, and Frank felt a searing pain in his chest. Frank woke up with a groan, his head pounding, his mouth tasting like a desert. He lay sprawled on his living room floor, the remnants of last night's drunken despair scattered around him. The details of the night before came back in a rush. The crushing defeat of the Twisters, the whiskey, the stranger in the bar, the deal. His hand flew to his chest, half expecting to find a gaping hole where his heart should be. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and the world seemed oddly normal, at odds with the turmoil raging within him. As the days turned into weeks, Frank tried to convince himself that he had imagined the whole thing. He threw himself back into his routine, going to work, watching football, cheering for the Twisters with the same unwavering loyalty as always. But something had changed. Frank couldn't shake off the feeling that he was being watched, that unseen eyes followed his every move. His dreams were haunted by images of the stranger in the bar, his eyes burning with infernal fire, his voice a constant, menacing whisper promising victory and threatening damnation. He had made a deal with the devil, and the devil always collects his due. The air crackled with anticipation as the Tulsa Twisters took the field for the season opener. Frank, his face painted in the team's colors, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread, joined in the roar of the crowd. The Twisters, once sluggish and predictable, played with a newfound ferocity, a precision that bordered on the supernatural. The scoreboard at the end of the first quarter told a story that sent a collective gasp through the stands. Tulsa Twisters 21, opponent's name 0. Final score, Tulsa Twisters 63, opponent's name 3. A victory of epic proportions, a statement that reverberated through the league. What began as a single, improbable victory quickly escalated into a phenomenon that defied explanation. Week after week, the Tulsa Twisters dominated their opponents, their victories becoming more and more lopsided, their style of play more and more intimidating. Their name, once synonymous with mediocrity, became whispered with a mix of awe and fear. Opponents, their confidence shattered before they even stepped onto the field, seemed to crumble before the relentless onslaught of the Twisters. Injuries, once a common occurrence, became a distant memory. The players seemingly impervious to the usual brutality of the game. The Twisters, once the laughingstock of the league, had become a force of nature, an unstoppable juggernaut. Frank, living a dream turned into a waking obsession, reveled in each victory, each broken record, each new accolade bestowed upon his beloved team. He was a local celebrity now, his face plastered across newspapers and television screens, his every word eagerly sought by reporters eager to decipher the secret of the Twisters' unprecedented success. Yet beneath the surface of his jubilation, a seed of unease began to grow. The whispers, the shadows that had haunted him since that fateful night in the bar, seemed to have intensified, their presence a constant unsettling reminder of the price of his pact. As the Twisters' winning streak stretched from weeks into months, an eerie silence began to settle over the team's victories. Gone was the genuine camaraderie, the shared joy of hard-fought wins. The players, once a band of brothers, now moved with a chilling detachment. Frank noticed a disturbing change in the fans as well. The cheers now held a frantic, almost desperate edge. The stadium felt oppressive, the air thick with unspoken tension. He began to notice strange occurrences during the games. The sound of inhuman growls mixed with the roar of the crowd. The smell of sulfur lingered in the air long after the final whistle. His dreams were now nightmarescapes of twisted figures and burning playing fields. The stranger's voice a constant, mocking presence. He would wake in a cold sweat, the feeling of unseen eyes watching him. The price of his pact was becoming all too real. The Twisters were winning, but at what cost? The Twisters were on an unstoppable march toward their third consecutive championship. Tulsa, once a sleepy backwater, was now a hotbed of frenzied fandom. Billboards, merchandise, news reports hailed the Twisters' dominance, but the city's glory felt like a gilded cage to Frank. He was trapped in a waking nightmare, haunted by his pact. The joy had drained from the game, replaced by gnawing anxiety. The cheers a constant reminder of his impending doom. Shadows grew longer, whispers louder with each victory. The once impenetrable armor of the Tulsa Twisters began to show cracks. Players, their eyes reflecting a growing fear, started making uncharacteristic mistakes. Passes were dropped, tackles were missed, the once fluid teamwork dissolving into a chaotic scramble. Whispers of discontent rippled through the team. Players spoke in hushed tones of nightmares, of feeling watched, of an oppressive presence that seemed to drain their energy, their will to play. Some even spoke of wanting to quit, to walk away from the game, from the curse that seemed to have infected their lives. The coaches, once basking in the reflected glory of the team's success, now seemed haggard and confused, their playbooks useless against the unseen force that was unraveling their team from within. Their reassurances rang hollow, their pep talks met with sullen silence. Frank, watching the team's slow motion collapse with a growing sense of dread, knew he had to do something. He had unleashed this darkness, and now it was consuming everything and everyone around him. He had to find a way to break the pact, to save his team, to save himself. Driven by a desperate hope, Frank returned to the bar where he had made the deal. The place seemed to have aged decades, the air heavy with despair. "There has to be a way," he shouted. The bartender just shook his head, eyes filled with weary sadness. Frank stumbled out, hope shattered, the weight of his pack pressing down. The championship game arrived, a day that had once held so much promise, now a looming specter of dread. The stadium, typically vibrant and loud, felt subdued, tension clinging to the air like a shroud. Frank, pale and drawn, sat alone, the weight of his impending doom a crushing burden. The scoreboard, once a beacon of hope, now flashed a cruel reminder of the Twisters' imminent downfall. Section 2, The Reckoning. As the clock ticked down, a hush fell over the stadium. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the Tulsa Twisters crumbled. Frank felt a cold hand close around his own. He turned to see the stranger, eyes glowing with malevolent glee. The final whistle blew, echoing Frank's despair. The scoreboard remained unchanged. Opponent's name, 35. Tulsa Twisters 3. The Twisters had lost. Their reign of terror ended. Section 3. The Silence After. The next morning, the city of Tulsa awoke to a stunned silence. Gone were the triumphant headlines, the celebratory rallies, the ubiquitous presence of the once revered Twisters. In their place was a void, a collective sense of loss that hung over the city like a pall. The Twisters' defeat was more than just a loss in a game. It was a crushing blow from which the team and the city would never fully recover. The players, their eyes haunted by the ordeal, quietly disbanded. Their dreams of gridiron glory shattered, their lives forever marked by the pact they had unwittingly been a part of. The stadium stood empty, a decaying monument to ambition and despair. The roar of the crowd, thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, all reduced to a hollow silence, a chilling reminder of the price of unchecked desire. And then there was Frank. Frank, the once devoted fan, the man who had loved his team more than his own soul, had vanished without a trace. Some whispered that he had been seen boarding a bus, his eyes vacant, his soul forfeit, his destination unknown. Others claimed he never left the stadium, his spirit forever bound to the scene of his downfall. Whatever his fate, one thing was certain. Frank's story served as a chilling reminder that some bargains, once struck, can never be undone, and some victories come at a price too terrible to bear. The Devil's Price. Frank's deal lingered long after the last stadium light flickered out. His ambition for the Tulsa Twisters blinded him to the true cost. He sacrificed his soul for hollow victories. The pursuit of success can lead to a dark path. The devil preys on our desires, offering the world for our souls. The Tulsa Twisters, once a symbol of hope, now a specter of his folly. A city scarred. Tulsa bore the scars of Frank's deal like open wounds. The excitement and hope had dissipated, replaced by unease. The stadium, once a beacon of pride, now stood as a decaying monument. Whispers followed, a reminder of the darkness that had descended. But even in the shadows, a flicker of hope remained. The citizens began to rebuild, fueled by resilience and unity. Tulsa, forever changed, would rise again, stronger and wiser.